Hello and welcome to Demand Better. So today we're going to be talking about the Pharmacare bill that was attempted to be passed by the NDP in the just earlier this week, a few days ago, I think on like the 24th. So what you need to know is that the Liberals often tend not to implement new or improved social programs, instead opting to commission another study to prove that it's a good idea first. So while this is a good idea for completely unproven concepts, Pharmacare is not that. It is already implemented in many countries, and it's been shown to save money and lives. The longer that Pharmacare is delayed, the longer that Canadians must pay higher prices than necessary and ration their medication. So in 2017, the Liberals said that they were waiting on the results of their most recent commission, the Hoskins Report, created by an advisory council of health and economic experts and chaired by the former Liberal health minister named Hoskins. So it probably surprised the Liberals when their delaying tactic resulted in the Liberal-led council coming out strongly in favor of immediate implementation of Pharmacare. The Hoskins Report was released to the public in June 2019, several months before an election, and so the Liberals promised to implement Pharmacare in response to substantial public pressure. Over a year and a half later, Canada is in the midst of a global pandemic and recession. In other words, the best time to spend money on improving your healthcare system. And the Liberals have not yet enacted their promise. So, the New Democratic Party gave them an opportunity to start the Pharmacare process officially in the form of Private Members Bill C-17, put forward by Peter Julian. So this bill called for the exact same form of Pharmacare as the Hoskins Report that the Liberals had promised. So a vote against their own plan would reveal that the Liberals were not serious about improving our healthcare. With the exception of two Liberals, the Liberal leadership kept all of their members from voting in favor of this bill. And it was, okay, it was even so, it's such a moderate bill that even a conservative voted for this. So only twice as many Liberals as conservatives voted for this expansion of, you know, the welfare state, as the conservatives would often like to say. Liberals provided roughly 3 reasons for their obstruction, and all of which seem to imply that they don't understand how our system works if we're to take them at face value. So the first reason was the NDP bill doesn't allocate any spending for Pharmacare. Well, yeah, it's a private members bill. Private members bills are legally barred from allocating spending. They're not allowed to commit any federal money to any of their law changes. This is the only way that non-governing parties are allowed to put their bills forward to Parliament. So there wasn't another option, and the type of bill literally prevents you from doing spending. There wasn't a way for it to allocate spending. So they're essentially just pretending that this is a problem that they didn't already know. The next thing is that Pharmacare is in provincial jurisdiction, so the NDP bill cannot be constitutionally implemented. Well, maybe somebody should tell them about the Canada Healthcare Act. You know, that federal bill that implements our entire public healthcare system across all the provinces and even enforces healthcare standards at a minimum. So this bill just calls for the version of Pharmacare that is in the Hoskins Report. And that Hoskins Report had one that was essentially saying the federal government needs to go to the provinces and offer them money in exchange for adding Pharmacare to their already existing healthcare systems. So it would be very, very easy to overcome the jurisdictional hurdle here. And frankly, it's not an argument. It's not an argument against the bill, and it's not an argument against anything. If this is unconstitutional, then so was their campaign promise to implement this exact plan. So it doesn't really make sense. The third argument is, in my opinion, their most revealing one. So the NDP bill is just too partisan for us to vote for it. Well, okay. How could this bill actually be less partisan? It's a private member's bill, meaning that which is the least partisan type of law because the NDP don't even get to put their party name on it. It's just the name of the MP who puts the bill forward. The entire party is not technically associated with this bill. It's just the NDP are the ones pushing the hardest for it. Which, that's not partisan. That's what parties are supposed to do. It calls for the Liberal appointed and chaired Council on Pharmacare. It calls for their plan. So that's one of the less partisan ways to do it, is by literally offering your opponent's plan as the one you're willing to implement. That's one of the least partisan things you could possibly do. If anything, this bill is partisan in the favor of the Liberals because it is the plan they already offered, and it's backed heavily by not only science, but by their own council. So there's basically no way that that could be called partisan in any kind of reasonable way. Finally, this bill is supported by members of nearly every single party in the parliament. The only party that didn't vote for it was the Bloc Québécois, and it's because Quebec already has their own Pharmacare system, so they don't really see any advantage to voting in favor of one for the other provinces. The entire NDP, the entire Green Party, 2 Liberal members, and a Conservative voted in favor of this bill. That is one of the least partisan bills in recent history. It is, it's very rare to get 4 different parties have members vote in favor of a bill like this. So that whole argument about it being just too partisan, first of all, it couldn't have been less partisan. They made every effort to make it a nonpartisan bill, and it actually was nonpartisan because it got votes from almost every party. That's kind of the definition of nonpartisan. So why pretend that the NDP are the people being partisan when the Liberals vote against their own bill? Well, it's because the Liberals do not want Pharmacare to pass if it was not introduced by them. They do not want any other party taking credit for implementing it before the Liberals would. The Liberals would rather delay keeping our costs up and our medications unavailable than risk working with other parties and show people that they have progressive options for parties that aren't the Liberals. So I think that the Liberals have really shown themselves to be cowardly and very partisan themselves. And essentially all of their arguments show that they really couldn't come up with any good reasons not to support this, because all 3 of their arguments are not only meaningless, but fall apart under the smallest amount of scrutiny. So, this is how you introduce a bill that you know might fail. You introduce the exact bill that the Liberals already said that they would agree with, because it shows that they secretly don't agree with it. And that's why they've taken 1.5 years without implementing it. And that's why they haven't really done their job here. Well, it's because they didn't really want to in this particular case, and the NDP has shown that. This is possibly the best way to introduce one of these bills in a way that shows your opponent to not be telling the truth about something that they are insistent about. They insist that they're the ones pushing for Pharmacare. Meanwhile, they're literally going to vote down their own Pharmacare bill. It sort of becomes pretty obvious at that point. Anyways, this has been Demand Better, and I hope you have an excellent day.